maintains full authority for the Board of Regents, and it still maintains a strong system. Now, if you believe the rumors of rampant infighting, you have to be pretty impressed with this kind of consensus. Given the requirements by the NWCCU that we increase shared governance and that we have a delineation of the role of the chancellors in order to not have our accreditation at risk, I believe that this document is a good place to start as you move forward with looking at your policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Max. And just for your information, we have received that, and it will be under consideration as the board looks at the policies. So
thank you very much, Chair Davies. Thank you for your time.
Next up, Forrest Wagner.
Social science methodology. I spent much of my 20s guiding in Alaska's big mountains, and as Ad Summum is the university's motto, we'll share with humility that I've been to the summit of Denali 8 times. I've spent the summers of my 30s salmon fishing in Bristol Bay with enough success to now own a drift permit and a boat. The experiences and successes I've had in my adult life are directly related to people I met and programs I worked with at the University of Alaska. My parents and brother hold degrees from here. All of my closest friends went to college here. 14 years ago in May of 2006, I was hired to coordinate outdoor studies at UAS in Juneau. Our outdoor studies program is a small environmental humanities offering that attracts students from all over the world and offers a minor, a certificate, and 2 emphasis areas in 4-year degrees. We're the only academic degree granting outdoor program in the UA system. I worked ODS for 4 years as a teaching staff member, then 8 years as a term faculty, and was hired into a tenure track line 2 years ago. Teaching outdoor studies is the best job I've ever had. I work with motivated people of various demographics who are regularly transformed and empowered by the work we do and the educational experiences we offer. For example, program grad and fellow Alaskan Katie McCaffrey wrote for a press release last month. To finish off my undergraduate degree, I spent the summer interning with the Alaska Mountaineering School out of Talkeetna. I was assigned to 3 Denali expeditions, resulting in 2 summits. The internship required me to draw from many aspects of my geography, environmental studies, and outdoor studies degree, and gave me an appropriate amount of responsibility and challenge while working with some of the best mountain guides in the business. I feel so much awe for the mountains and glaciers of the Alaska Range and was happy to share a sense of stewardship for the land with fellow climbers. I am a climate change survivor. Almost 4 years ago, I was attacked by a saddle brown bear while teaching ski mountaineering for the ODS program. I believe I skied over the bear's den, which, because of the unusually warm spring and low snowpack, disturbed her. On my way back up the hill, the grizzly attacked me. We fought. I sustained major injuries, but thankfully my class was okay. The bear and I rolled together about 300 vertical feet, then off a small cliff. The outdoor leadership skills and theory that I teach saved my life. 4 hours after the encounter, and only because I was surrounded by students like Katie McCaffrey, I was airlifted to Anchorage. 13 surgeries and a summer of physical therapy later, I returned to UAS, where I continue to lead the outdoor studies program. Cutting faculty positions does not solve Alaska's political crisis. Our ODS enrollments are strong, and I currently advise nearly 30 students. In theory, this steady enrollment should pay for my workload, but I'll work for less, even though Alaska has almost $70 billion in its permanent fund. I know it's complicated, but we can use 1/3 of that money without damaging the fund. That's more money in savings than any U.S. state has, or for that matter, our terribly indebted federal government. That's not to say that the board and the university don't have turbulent times ahead. But if we can agree that UA is important for Alaskans, and it has certainly been important for me and everyone I know and respect currently making a life here, why aren't you, the representative of Alaska's public, with UA's fiduciary responsibilities, as Regent Perdue so elegantly framed it, talking about paying administrators less? Why aren't we, the employees of this wonderful place where critical thinking and big ideas are in theory celebrated, advocating and lobbying the legislature for a broad-based tax? Why don't we rebrand UA the Climate Change University? There's so much potential here. Thank you for volunteering to serve us, the people of Alaska, and thanks too for your restraint in cutting faculty positions.
Thank you very much.
I just wanted to say how famous you are and how many students I've talked to that, really get a lot out of what you do and your experience, your mentorship. And thank you for what you do. And thank you for that testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you, Forrest. Appreciate it. Next, I have Scott Downing.
My name's Scott Downing. I'm the UAA Faculty Senate President and the English faculty at Kenai Peninsula College. First want to thank you for your service, for the opportunity to speak. You've been doing far more work than you should. Much of the extra work, I think, is wrapped in concerns about trust. As David Longenecker mentioned yesterday at the workshop, trust once undermined is difficult to reestablish. And I just want to mention that the UAA votes of no confidence were plain and simple about a lack of trust in the direction and leadership of the university system. Lack of confidence in decisions that were being made without necessary analysis and without the necessary involvement of the chancellors and shared governance. Important voices were not being heard, and the NWCC letter confirmed those concerns. In difficult budget situations, it's particularly important to follow processes where everyone's involved. It is faculty's obligation to our students, our communities, to raise concerns about decisions being made that may affect accreditation and may undermine our ability to meet our mission and serve our students. Falling in line for the team is antithetical to the values of an academic institution that thrives on the free exchange of ideas and is counterproductive to solving problems. We cannot sacrifice those values of higher education, and being asked to do so undermines the integrity of the university and further undermines trust. While building trust is a difficult task, we are hopeful that we can find a path forward. There's some areas to build on. Chancellors have been ready and willing to take on the responsibility to effectively manage their universities. Earlier in the fall, the UAA Faculty Senate passed a resolution not only expressing trust and confidence in our Chancellor, Chancellor Sandeen, but also in Chancellor White and Chancellor Caulfield to lead their respective institutions. That trust is something to build on. The Faculty Alliance and the Faculty Senates continued to be engaged in these discussions, collaborating and cooperating to find solutions to the challenges that we are facing. Recently, Faculty Alliance developed suggested revisions to board policy, which have been mentioned previously. Trusting the board will thoroughly consider that important shared governance voice in determining next steps. That trust is something to build on. Trust will only be rebuilt through additional concrete steps. To move forward, we need to be transparent and open with communication. Faculty have been forthright about their perspectives. The UAA Faculty Senate meetings are open to the public and recorded. We welcome the regents anytime. Chris Fallon, the former Faculty Alliance chair, started a Coffee with the Regents initiative that we hoped would lead to more discussions between regents and faculty and more common understanding about shared governance and other university issues. While communication policy can inhibit some of those discussions, those kinds of efforts begin to build trust. Evidence-based research, problem solving, and decision making is the heart of the academic enterprise. Rebuilding trust will depend on widely shared processes that use a thoughtful, where considered, evidence-based approach to the change that we will be making. We are heartened by the decision to focus on the cost-benefit analysis and the effects on accreditation before single accreditation is again considered, a motion that was brought forward at the last meeting. Steps like that begin to build trust. One of the most important values of higher education is valuing all voices. The power of shared governance is the important opportunity to harness the good ideas, the perspectives, the thoughtful approaches, and of course the concerns of those voices. We are in shared governance because we value and see the benefit in sharing voices to find the best solutions to the problems we are facing. I appreciate the discussion concerning the importance of shared governance groups. However, we continue to see evidence that the voices of student government is being dismissed. That perspective is unacceptable and will further undermine trust if allowed to continue. Finally, a top-down approach will continue to create a trust deficit. The support for a change in board policy has been overwhelming. The strongest leaders recognize the importance of sharing responsibility and authority to strengthen an organization. I encourage you to consider the importance of revising board policy to do just that. Thank you very much.
Next, I have Joe Heckman. Joe, I'd like to acknowledge you as a former member of the board and a chair. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Chair Davies. Good morning, Regents, President Johnson, Chancellors. It's good to be here. It's kind of odd to be on the other side.
Odd for us, too.
My name is Joe Heckman. I'm a retired banker and a former regent. My term ended last year, and I live in Fairbanks. I love this university. Most of you who know me know that. You know of my long and wonderful association with this university. I'm a double alumna. My husband is an alum. My sister, brother, and son are alums. My mother worked for Elmer Rasmussen Library for 35 years. My father was awarded an honorary doctorate of law degree from UAF, and our family has endowed scholarship in my late dad's name. So we put our money where our mouth is. We are very involved with our university. I've been following your meetings, and I'm not here to comment on any one subject or issue. I wish simply for you to know that there are many people outside of the UA community who are strong supporters, who love this university, and are watching anxiously to see where our university is going. I came this morning to share with you some thoughts about our university. My association began in 1975 when my dad pointed in the general direction of this hill and said, "This is where you're going." Because we didn't have money to send me to some fancy school. He said, "You don't need fancy, you need a good education." I was one of the 2 Indian students on campus at that time, and perhaps the only undergraduate Indian student. What a wonderful experience I had here. I was 17-year-old, fresh from India. I was a commuter student who walked 2+ miles and then took a bus to come to campus. If you are from the 70s, you would know Walt's bus. I was on it. My advisors and professors were great. They took interest in my education. They advised me, they guided me, and were available to me and helped me get in 4 years. Trust me, my dad was very happy. I knew I needed a degree because my dad said so. But what I did not know till later was how those 4 years shaped my future. It's hard to believe, but I was very shy. But in those 4 years, I became a little surer in my footing, became more confident, learned how to speak in classrooms, learned to have opinions, perhaps too many, and then to engage and to expand my horizons. My confidence led me to aspire to get a job and then excel in it. So who knew that this girl from India would one day be the first ever female bank president in the history of state of Alaska? And be on the Board of Regents of the university that she attended. I accumulated numerous awards and recognition along the way, all because I got a great start and a very strong foundation here at University of Alaska. I'm not alone, you see. If you look back 100 years and see how many lives have been changed, how many futures have been defined by this wonderful university, you would come across hundreds and hundreds of names, an amazing list of who is who. This university has created more success stories than we might ever know or think about. And you know what? You continue to do so every year. You're changing lives, you're shaping futures. Education should not be taken lightly by those who educate. You never know who you might guide, mentor, and nudge towards success. You have the power and the authority to shape many more lives in the next 100 years. So much has been in the news about the university, and lately, not all of it is flattering. It's very sad to me. Yesterday, we heard about the need to be heard. We heard about inclusion, and this morning as well. Maria Williams spoke to that point, and our student leader spoke to that point as well. I do know that you're listening, and I know you're listening to some percentage of people, but I will submit to you that you're not hearing from the vast majority of people. It makes me wonder about those that are silent. Silent group. Their staff, faculty, students, alumni, donors, like my family, and community supporters. This has been on my mind a lot. I believe that you and others in leadership have been consumed by the 25-30% within our university to distraction. This noise in our university have commanded so much attention that our entire existence is at risk. In my opinion, we have gone mission adrift. So I walk among the 75 to 80%, the silent group. These are people that go to work, keep their heads down, do their jobs. And they're waiting to see what you do. They worry, they're afraid, but will not, or perhaps cannot, or whatever the reason, say or do too much. There's too much at stake for them and their families. I have walked among the 75 to 80% that took a risk and came here to Alaska to work at this fine university, raise their families, and continue to invest in the university and in their community. They didn't come here to start making any trouble. They just came here because they wanted to be here and had a good job. Their time was spent in their work, whether teaching, whether doing research or support. They are anxiously waiting to see where this university is going and what the outcomes are for them. So the vast majority waits. They don't stir up anything, they just wait. They do their jobs and they wait. So members of the Board of Regents, I believe that when your attention is consumed by the 25 to 30%, you disrespect the 75 to 80% who are waiting and doing their jobs. In the last few months, I have watched your meetings and have been disheartened to see that there is division on the board. There are divided interests, and that perhaps the geographical biases that were not supposed to have been there are starting to creep in, and it's fracturing the strength of your board and your solid leadership. You have a very tough job. I think of you because most of you I served with for 8 years. How difficult this must be for you. But you must collectively strengthen your resolve and do the right thing. This is not about regionalism. It's not about friends. It's not about colleagues. It's not about where you live, but it's about the greater good, the bigger cause. It's about University of Alaska, an institution that has been here for 100 years and whose fate you now hold in your hands. So I want you to think about what your legacy will be. Years from now, when we look back, would you be the ones that will be credited for creating a solid, well-respected, and thriving university, or would you be known for dismantling this institution and fracturing it? What will your legacy be? We look to you, I look to you, for your vision, leadership, and strengthen your belief and convictions. I would submit to you that you do know what needs to be done, and that you have always known what needs to be done. You know you have the authority to govern. You have the authority to define policy, structure, whatever it is. Constitutionally and legally, you have the power. You have a strong CEO. We support Jim Johnson. And let's get this ball rolling. Let's preserve this fine university that has been built on the shoulders of great leaders that came before you, great leaders like yourselves. Don't let the noise distract you. And remember us, the silent majority that's waiting. We are respectfully but anxiously waiting. Don't let us down. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Next, I have Jamie Bagley.
I just want to say thank you for letting us be able to testify this morning. My name is Jamie Bagley, and I am the Student Body Vice President of the University of Alaska Anchorage, and I'm also currently a senior working on my Bachelor's of Science. I would like to talk about our decision to pass a vote of no confidence in our resolution number 20-05 on October 25th, as well as President Johnson's response. As student representatives for the UAA student body, we respect President Johnson's response to our vote of no confidence, but we feel that he has not fully recognized the bigger picture that we are trying to communicate. This response provides yet another instance in which President Johnson has shown that he's not what is best for the University of Alaska system. President Johnson claims to listen to students and value their place as stakeholders in the university, but has chosen to disregard and belittle our voice rather than use this as an opportunity to start a dialogue. President Johnson was quoted as saying by KTVA, "I think they'll come to understand being in the arena is a very, very important for actually understanding the situation." To clarify, we as students are already in the arena, and without us, there would be no arena. We are directly affected by the actions taken by statewide leadership. This was one of many belittling and dismissive responses to our resolution. Furthermore, as student leaders, we are intimately involved in the operations and structure of the university. We do understand the situation better than most. If the president feels we have no understanding of the process, he has clearly failed to educate us on the situation at hand. We have come to this conclusion with the information we have been given. If this is a misunderstanding of the situation, there has been a lack of communication with upper administration to the student body of which they serve. We are aware of the responsibility held by the president of a university system, and we cannot pretend to understand the full extent of the climate surrounding this position. With all due respect to his position, our members would like to highlight that this response was inappropriate from the president of a university meant to uphold and support students. It is agreed that many students are here at this university to gain experience they have not had before, but to overlook the work and the research of students is not only unbecoming, but disregarding to the institution as a whole. The University of Alaska produces exemplary students and graduates, and it is unfitting for the face of the university to misrepresent as such. This response in an attempt to discredit only reaffirms our decision to fully stand behind our vote of no confidence and reiterates that President Johnson is not the right fit for taking the university to its full potential. Thank you.
Next, I have Claire Baldwin.
Members of the Board of Regents, thank you for allowing us the opportunity to testify today. My name is Claire, and I'm the UAA Student Body President. As has already been stated a few times, myself and a half dozen other UAA students paid our own way this week to Fairbanks because we believe in this university and the power and weight our words as students can carry. Today, you will be deciding whether to raise tuition by 5% next year. And while this may not seem like a lot to you, it can mean the difference between attaining higher education and not for many students across the University of Alaska system. When citing reasons for a raise in tuition, President Johnson has used the need for an increased competitiveness with the WICHE average. But what exactly is the University of Alaska competing with? With other universities in Western states? Students who want to and have the means will leave Alaska for school, regardless of our tuition rates. And raising those rates makes us look even less attractive. So what are we competing with? For University of Alaska students, many of us are competing with whether or not to go to school. And by raising tuition 5%, the choice of whether to attend may as well be made for us, because it's not just tuition that will go up next year. It's the fees that are tied to tuition and the differential costs of engineering and management courses. And when President Johnson told us on Wednesday during our Coalition of Student Leaders meeting that this tuition increase will only raise revenue by $7 million and, quote, is a drop in the bucket, why are we placing undue burden on students when, according to our president, it won't actually make that much of a difference? And when we asked President Johnson questions on this statement, we were dismissed because these numbers were found using, again, quote, higher level math, and we apparently couldn't possibly understand. This leads me to my second point, the vote of no confidence our assembly took 2 weeks ago. If you had taken the time to read it, you would have seen the countless instances we cited that led us to that decision. We were not pressured by our faculty or administration to make this vote. It was actually working for months. Months we spent poring over our communication history to find quantitative instances to cite. The feedback we received from President Johnson and many of you sitting around this table was dismissive and disrespectful. But unfortunately, none of you said that directly to us, but rather stated through the media or in the middle of your meeting yesterday in passing. We would like to see moving forward a healthy dialogue between ourselves, the president, and you, the board. Goals you yourself discussed yesterday. When you ask our opinion, actually listen and not dismiss it because it doesn't fall in line with your vision. Use this as an opportunity to mend bridges and actually work on the goals you spent 4 hours discussing yesterday and build back our trust in you. Because without us, the students, there is no university, and we should be your first priority.
Teresa Roble.
Hello again. I know most of you know me. My name is Teresa Roble, and I was the acting chair for the Coalition of Student Leaders. The Coalition of Student Leaders just recently elected a new chair, Audrey Kruber in the back here. So please treat her with respect. She's awesome. And so a note on students, I'd just like also to thank the student regent that we have here today and all the students also sitting in the back. A lot of them are missing class or going to be late. And a lot of my colleagues from UAA came up on their own money to be here and testify. And for a lot of them, that was their first time. So thank you for listening to them. And so another note, we are told that students are the priority of a university. So please treat them with the respect of those who are the priority. Throughout my time as chair, we've seen a lot of different things. Unfortunately, it was probably not the funnest time to be the acting chair. We saw a declaration of financial exigency where students were fraught with fear about their educational status. We saw a consideration of the UA system moving to a single accreditation, and students and student governments were against this for various reasons. And then we just recently have seen a proposal to tuition increases in which students and student governments also see very little justification except for the knowledge that we are in an unfortunate circumstance. I talked a lot about building bridges yesterday during the workshop, and I want to emphasize that it was on building bridges. At our summit, as we discussed tuition proposals, it was asked how could we as student leaders justify tuition increases to our fellow students, and we were then kind of posed to us, that's the responsibility of student governments to justify to the students that tuition should be increased. And I'd just like to clarify that role a little bit, in that, yes, student government does have a role in playing to dialogue with students and find a digestible way to pass on information that the administration is currently working on to the students. However, we are not the propaganda. It is not our responsibility to tell students what to think. We are to present the information to them, and then we are to hear their reception of it, and then we then represent them for that. So I'd just like to clarify that role. However, as I said yesterday, I do think that there has been a lot of innovation between the relationship between the administration and the students. As I said with like my example with Vice President Lair, I honestly think that there is hope and opportunity. So let's head toward that. Thank you so much.
Next, I have Keon O'Brien.
Good morning, Regents, and thank you for your time. My name is Keon O'Brien, and I am a member of USUAA, and I'm currently pursuing a Bachelor of Music and Music Education at UAA. While there's a lot to talk about today, I'm really wanting to focus on the communication you are having with students in this important decision-making process and USUAA's recent vote of confidence in President Johnson. As I reflected on the events of the summer, I sort of noticed that the university banded together. Faculty, staff, and students from all three campuses, as well as statewide and local administration, banded together to fight against the governor's office at that $135 million cut, and we succeeded. While $70 million is still a lot, I counted it as a victory against that 41% cut. The economic situation in the state, we realized the university we have to restructure, we have to change how we're built. This is when I noticed things started to change. You guys keep talking about having student voices at the tables and how you're open to students bringing in their input. Well, we are here. I paid $150 to fly up here and missed 2 days of my classes to make my voices heard. It's obvious that the only voices you want are those that agree with you. I could point out earlier today in the testimonies for former staff members and regents, the 2-minute timer was turned off. As soon as our vice president stepped up, the 2-minute timer was turned back on. After the compact with the governor was signed, and the students increasingly made our voices heard that we are against single accreditation, we were thrown to the wind. And while you decided to postpone discussion on single accreditation and consolidation until 2021, for some reason, it was constantly brought up in yesterday's workshop. I voted in favor of USUAA's vote of no confidence, and I saw this as a last resort. While I understand the stress President Johnson faces, and I do not envy at all the situations you all are in leading this university, I can understand the stress. It does not excuse the exclusion of students in this discussion. We are why the university exists. The university exists to give us the education to go on and get careers and be the future of the state of Alaska. You keep saying that students are the future. Then why isn't the future being consulted on what our future holds for the university? Lack of communication with students and the disregard of our attempts to get our voices heard is inexcusable. And that's the main reason I voted in favor. I found President Johnson's response to our vote of no confidence rude and unbefitting of an executive officer. When I read it, the message I got was that we are young and we are naive and we don't know what's going on. We are young, we're students, it's what we are. We were not naive. Between working 1 full-time job and 3 part-time jobs over the summer, I was still an advocate for the university, following news every single day to get updates. I joined student government just to fight for the university. We know the severity of the situation, and we understand that a vote of no confidence was a last resort, and it was. It was a last effort to try and change the administrative structure to drive the university to a better future. As you move forward, I urge you to look at giving the chancellors more power and delineating their roles as chief executive officers. As you discuss, it is well within your power as the Board of Regents to do so. I have full confidence in Chancellor Sandy's leadership at UAA. Just the short year that she's been here, she has shown that she cares about UAA and the future of the students. She is constantly reaching out to students, holding very, very recurring and often ask the chancellor anything, to open a dialogue with students, get our input. As you may know, the UAA bookstore had to recently downsize and relocate due to movement of enrollment services back to main campus. While this was a struggle for students and administration, Chancellor Sandine made sure that students' voices were heard so the bookstore could still support student success. Chancellor Sandine has been dealing with the same issues that the Board of Regents and President Johnson has on a local level, and has dealt with it without excluding students, unlike President Johnson. As I cautioned you all last meeting, students won't hesitate to leave Alaska for school, and they are the future. I came up here my junior year of high school when my dad was assigned to Joint Base Waldorf-Richardson. I then decided my spring semester junior year to graduate a year early. UAA was really the only option for me. With everything that's happened, I know many friends who have left UEA or are highly considering transferring. Because of everything going on, it's put me in the state where I have to make the difficult, heartbreaking decision on deciding if I'm going to stay at UEA for my degree, or if I'm going to transfer somewhere else. And I don't want to. I want to stay at UEA. I love the community I have found, and I want to stay and get my degree. But I feel like I don't have a choice to get a quality education in a stable university environment with everything going on. Regents President Johnson, I urge you in a meeting to sit down and look at US UEA Resolution 2005, our vote of no confidence, and take action. Whether it be making amends on our grievances, we listed them out, we gave examples, look at them, see how we can bend this bridge in the future, moving forward, or deciding if it's best to have somebody else at the helm at our university as we lead it to a better future. Thank you.
Yeah. There's many more. So I have, we've reached our hour, but I'm going to extend the public hearing. I have another sheet of people signed up here, and I will ask people to try to, if you're making testimony that essentially has already been made, if you would try to agree to the previous testimony and then keep your testimony short as possible, just so that we can hear everybody that's on the sheet. And I don't want to suggest that I don't want to hear from you, but I want you to appreciate the fact that we have a very long agenda to get to in the rest of the day. So it's not meant to be disrespectful. It's just meant to be respectful of the number of people that are signed up and the agenda that we face. So please honor that, if you will. Next, I have Rose Kruger.
Thank you for extending the testimony so you can hear more of our voices. I know that a lot of my colleagues from UEA flew out here just to talk to you guys face to face. I'm a senior at UEA. My name is actually the first on the authors list for the vote of no confidence. And I mainly wanted to come up here to address the lack of trust that students currently have in our systematic leaders. Because currently the feeling is that the chancellors are the only ones who have our backs as students. And it's not a new feeling. It's something that has started back when we had the School of Education accreditation issues. And it's something that I feel is tied to strategic pathways and the push to consolidation that has been occurring since probably around 2015 even. Because there's been a talk about making it so each university has one thing that they do well, and you can only get that at that university, which it's not a bad idea in itself. But the way that it's been pursued is what we have an issue with. We want to be included in the conversations. We want to feel like our voice and our input is valued. Because if you don't value your students' voices and you don't value your students' input, what's the point of having students? What's the point of having our student governance organizations? And that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I have Carmen Guzman.
Hello. Thank you for all being here today. I'm a second year graduate student, a writing tutor, and I'm also on the graduate academic board. So you might say I'm pretty involved. I just wanted to touch on how this affects graduate students, and also one group no one has really mentioned are your students in the technical colleges, as well as the ones that are English as a second language learners. Just working at the Writing Center, many don't even know what's going on. And Chancellor Sandine is really good at, with her ask me anythings. That I think is what we mean when students want, like, they just want it in front of them, someone talking to them so that they really understand what's happening. And I did have some points I wanted to touch on. So, for instance, the school's motto is stories being made every day. And you have many students in the technical college that are coming from other countries. They want to be lawyers, or you have adults in their older age, but they are studying business. They are the ones that run the businesses in the community. And that, I think, is really like the type of collaboration and like spirit of community that is important in times like these. And so that's why I ask myself how you could be here and be comfortable with your students not being, like, not even knowing that there is a huge crisis and that we just, we declared financial exigency and then we didn't. Another way of, what you really want is grad students, okay, in this, in your schools. And because grad students are the ones that will come here, get their education, and then continue to build that life. And especially for me, that I'm coming all the way from California, I have nothing to be doing here, but I just basically followed my spirit and I found my own community here. And it'd be a shame if, for example, like my program didn't exist anymore. And I just want to close with an example. Last year, I was the assistant director of a conference UAA has had since 1995. And this is the first year we're not going to have the conference because not only do we not have enough faculty support, there isn't enough graduate student support, and there isn't enough money. So at the fair this summer, I won a pair of very expensive boots for the winter. And when I remembered I had worked with a girl on this conference, and for our silent auction, she had brought in a bunch of pairs of shoes. And then I realized, oh my God, like, this is probably her business, like her mom's business. And the fact that I could support that business and that they had also supported us really, really solidified that spirit of community. And this spirit of community is what makes me want to continue living in Anchorage, continue going to UAA, even though I've considered transferring as well. And also just be here with my fellow colleagues and students that make me feel at home as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, next I have Allie Stover.
I want to start by sharing my values and telling you who I am. My name is Allie Stover, and I'm the chair of the Youth Advisory Commission, student ombudsperson, and part of the Seawolf debate team at UAA. I'm a third-generation Alaskan and deeply committed to my community. I value a functional democracy, cultural richness, and access to higher education. Today, I've been given the opportunity to share my voice, and I understand the severity and weight of my words because I'm not only talking about my future, but the future of my peers and the stability of my home. I'd like to share two examples from a macro and micro level regarding how decisions made at the Board of Regents are affecting communities at ground level. And then I will follow with my solution of advocacy. On the macro level, on August 29, 2019, we had a town hall for the budget cuts in UA at our Anchorage Public Library with Assembly members, UA Staff Council, UAA Faculty Senate, USUAA, and alumni. This was open for everyone to attend. 150 community members interacted with this event. Unanimously, They voted for UA admin to slow down the decision-making, not in favor of single accreditation, and to maintain the uniqueness of UAS, UAF, and UAA. Now, when we have unanimous decision-making, that is seriously impactful and needs to be heard. On the micro level, the Youth Advisory Commission is the most diverse municipal commission. We have incredibly bright and motivated students. They look to me and ask if they will be able to attend UAA when they graduate. And I honestly can't offer them the comfort and stability these bright students deserve. I didn't even know if I'd be able to return back to school this semester. I've seen my friends and mentors participate in a mass exodus as we feel like we have no other choice. Now that I've gone over some micro and macro level of examples in our communities, I'd like to present you my solution of advocacy. I support decentralization for the security of our accreditation, efficiency, and to follow the national trends of other universities, and to also build healthy competition and cooperation between our universities. Thank you to our Faculty Senate and Chancellor Sandine for platforming and empowering our voices. We do not mean to be disrespectful when we call out instances of being dismissed by UA administration. We traveled hundreds of miles in exchange to have barely 100 seconds of having a seat at the table. I agree that UA needs to be reformed, that sacrifices and reductions need to be made, but that conversation must seriously involve our community. Thank you.
Where'd Allie go? Thank you. Thank you for your comments, and thank you for stating that we made these decisions, because we are the system. We make the decisions. And so if the president, and he executes our decisions. So when you're talking about the system, it's the regents. So, and you stated it correctly, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Juan Graziano.
Good morning. My name is Tuan Graziano. I'm a member of the USUA organization, UAA student government body. First of all, of course, I'd like to thank you. It's really amazing to have this opportunity to speak directly with you and provide direct input. Really, what I wanted to begin and start off with is that recognition that so many of my fellow students, including myself, are here on our own money, on our own time, and away from our own classes or work, so that we can commit to being here and being involved and having a voice and showing that voice. When it comes to the Board of Regents, you have mentioned time and time again that the president is an extension of the Board of Regents, that he is your executive officer, and that he upholds your values and principles. When it comes to that, the president has time and time again refused to really consider the voices of students and faculty, and as well as take into consideration what we are trying to communicate to the rest of you. Is that really your principles and values, that our voices should be belittled and dismissed, that a faculty that we work closely with should also be belittled and dismissed? Yesterday, I heard many attitudes and values where just because the faculty and the students might have some kind of input or selfish desires in terms of their voicing of no confidence and how they feel about the university and the president, that they should just be dismissed. What are we at? What is the point if we as an institution, as the Board of Regents, ask for student and faculty input, but just because we don't like it, we decide to belittle their voice and their input? That isn't the way that I think that you as a board should be going in the direction of. Included in that is student voice and input, saying that time and time again that tuition increases are preventing them from choosing UAA or any of the UAF or UAS campuses as their post-secondary education choice. Time and time again, every tuition increase, we lose students. I've worked closely every year with hundreds of high schoolers, and each of them always say that stability within the university system and tuition costs are really the two main reasons why students don't go to UAA or UAF or UAS. I have friends who teach in high schools in the Anchorage School District who mention time and time again, those are the two main reasons that high schoolers bring up when it comes to enrolling in one of our higher education systems. I think it's critically important that you really take the time to look at what these tuition increases will cost, not in terms of revenue, but in terms of students. There are so many brilliant and energetic students that I have the absolute wonderful pleasure and privilege to work with every single year. And every single year that tuition is increased, we lose some of those students. And I can't imagine losing so many of those students. We are going to be a shadow of our former selves if this keeps happening. I really, really wish that you guys took the time to really consider the ramifications of this tuition increase and the ramifications of losing so many bright students who do want to stay in Alaska, who care about Alaska, like myself and my fellow colleagues here. I think that in the end, that faculty and students do have a voice. We are trying to show that voice. And I think there is positivity in our attempts to reach out and communicate. There has been instances where we have been able to communicate with the Board of Regents, with the president, with the statewide administration. And if we had more of that, like we've had in the past, for example, recently with Vice President Paula Lair here in regards to tuition, that would be the way forward. And that is what we encourage and that is what we desire. And I would like to say that despite the efforts of the president and some of the regents of this board to diminish the identity of the University of Alaska Anchorage, I believe that faculty and staff, my fellow students and I, will always and forever be proud to be Seawolves.
Thank you. Josiah Nash.
Hello. Hi. Mr. Chair, members of the board, I come before you today, unlike some of my colleagues, to not talk about a specific policy or individual within our university system, but rather speak about two fundamental principles, both involving decentralization. Over the past several years, during my time in UAA student government, I've seen members of this statewide governance system make comments that have hinted members of the student body or individual universities are either inexperienced, uneducated, or unintelligent to a degree that we do not know how to make or advise the board in making decisions for ourselves. Such comments, including recent ones, deeply worry me. This is because these beliefs go against everything we stand for as Alaskans, Americans, and citizens of a republic. Our political system was founded off the very notion that because humans are rational creatures, we indeed have the ability to make decisions for ourselves. In fact, the founders of our country believed that decisions are best made when those who the decisions are being made about have a say in the deliberation. That we can make better decisions in our local assemblies than those in London, hundreds of miles away. This is the first principle of decentralization I urge the board to consider while conducting their business, that of devolved governance, decentralization among physical locations, also known as the vertical separation of powers. The second and final principle I would like the board to consider is a counterpart to the vertical separation of powers, the horizontal separation of powers, or decentralization among the organs of the governance system. Particularly in the case of UA, this would encompass the idea that the board should be the institution to collectively produce new policy, not the president. While the board currently does this, I question if too much direction is sought from the president. This fundamental principle is raised by James Madison in Federalist Number 47. Quoting French philosopher Montesquieu, Madison explains, "When the legislative and executive powers are united in the same person, there can be no liberty." Now, it may be in this case that the role of the board and the president are slightly different from the traditional U.S. model Madison speaks of. With that being said, the idea behind of what Madison speaks remains the same. Policy is best created with the collective wisdom of multiple people than with a single individual. I have personally witnessed this working in student government. We will start with one idea for resolution, and by the end, you will have a resolution that is a result of multiple ideas. Lower quality ideas are usually alleviated by the other members of the body. Ultimately, we produce very high quality resolutions. I truly believe if the board fully embraced this model, UA would be better off. Please consider these two aforementioned principles when making governance decisions for our students, faculty, and staff. These principles are timeless, derivative of natural right theory, and can apply to most situations throughout history and culture. Thank you for the time I have here today to speak to you. And I hope our three universities have a bright future moving forward. Thank you.
I think when I went from one sheet to the other, I inadvertently skipped Brooke Hansen. Is Brooke still here?
Hi, my name is Brooke Hansen. I'm a junior transfer student at UAA, and I'm a senator at UAA. First, I would like to thank you for this opportunity for public testimony because I think it's an important part of this process. But what I'd really like to talk about is a big error that I've seen in the entirety of this process, which is I feel like there's not a good route for communication between student governments and including staff to you, the board of directors, and our president and vice president. I guess earlier this week during the coalition meeting, I had the opportunity to ask Vice President Lair what the process is for reviewing documents and other correspondences that student governments make with the president's office and the rest of statewide administration. And I feel like there isn't a clear process that allows us students to have a two-way communication system that is reliable with our decision makers. And I don't feel like I want to sit here and criticize you, President Johnson, because that's not my point, but I just feel like there needs to be more of an open and honest communication dialogue throughout the entire process from the point when an idea is pitched to the end result when you guys vote. Because I feel like what happens is you make an idea or you make a proposal, and then eventually we hear about it through one route or another. And then what happens is we take a couple of weeks to think about it and then try and write a resolution or pass a letter. And then by then we're up against a deadline and we don't always hear back, and there isn't always some sort of opportunity for us to go back and forth. And so what I feel like needs to happen is we need a better process for this. We need something where we can sit down and have face-to-face communication and dialogue over what's going to happen, so that way we can reach more of a consensus, and then maybe some of this animosity and angst would disappear. And the main issue for us students is that we don't feel heard. And I don't mean to say that you necessarily intentionally were dismissive, but that's how it came across to us students, because we never really heard back throughout this process for tuition increases, and eventually we ended up passing a vote of no confidence, which I understand that that's never fun, and I wouldn't wish to be in your position, and I understand that a lot of tough decisions really do have to be made, but we need to be able to have better communication, because otherwise things aren't going to get resolved, and it's never going to be a cohesive relationship that we're going to have. And so I asked that, maybe not today at the board meeting that you discuss this, but that eventually throughout the next couple of months, throughout the rest of the semester, that we sit down and we have a conversation about how we can better have open and honest communication, where, as the moderator put it yesterday, we can sit down and have an opportunity to listen in order to change our perspective. And then we might get somewhere. And that's really what I'm asking for. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Next, I have Calvin, and I can't quite read the last name, so you'll have to help me.
My name is Calvin Zulo. I'm a member of student government at UAS in Juneau and vice chair of the Coalition of Student Leaders. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I want to speak on two things very quickly. There was some discussion yesterday of rebuilding trust between the board and the larger university community. Any action you take to empower chancellors would be a great way to start that. The chancellors are visible and accessible to campus communities in ways that the regents and the president simply aren't and can't be. Also, there will be discussion today about increasing tuition. I have concerns about that. A very small percentage of UAS students are traditional first-time four-year students who might be choosing between UA and out-of-state schools. UAS is the best and often the only choice we have for getting an education. And but it won't be if we can't afford it. There are already students and student leaders I know who won't be able to. I'm sure that the same is true at other universities. Additionally, I'm not convinced that tuition increases will offset declines in student enrollment. The tuition increase might itself exacerbate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is it, I'm not sure that, I'm having trouble with the handwriting. Kevin.
Thank you for your time today, you guys. I'm Kevin Parrish from Ketchikan, Alaska, and I am the president of our campus, a very small campus. And I thank you for your time. I've heard a lot of people speak today, and I heard a lot of people speak yesterday, and it seems like everybody's in the firing range. We have a captain and we have a ship, and this captain needs to run this ship. We have the duties for all of you to figure out how we're going to do that. And in Ketchikan, there's a lot of uncertainty. People are leaving, students are scared, and everybody is worried. And the communication needs to be open, and it needs to be strong. And after listening yesterday, I felt even more afraid. We need to take away that fear. We need to rewrite this ship, and we need to get moving. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I have Steve Frank.
Morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for the opportunity to address you this morning. My name is Steve Frank, and I'm a lifelong resident of Fairbanks. I graduated from this university, as did my father and my stepmother. And they both served on the Board of Regents independently at different times. And two of my sisters are graduates. One's a professor. 3 of our kids are graduates. So we're very connected to the university, very proud of our university. It was a life-changing experience for me to be a graduate, to go to school here and succeed. And so it means a great deal to me. I believe strongly in one university system for our state. The idea of having one university with one single appropriation so that you regents can do your job makes a tremendous amount of sense to me. When I first was in the legislature, I guess I didn't mention I was in the legislature for 12 years in both the House and the Senate. And when I was first in the legislature, there were 6 appropriations for the university. The regents convinced us as legislators that one appropriation was the way to go. And it was a good idea. And that idea has stood the test of time. It's still a good idea. The idea of splitting off into multiple universities is a really bad idea, in my opinion. I think it'd be a disaster for the legislature to try to grapple with. It would be no end to the competition between campuses. We think it's bad now. Believe me, it'll be way worse if we have multiple universities. So stay with your existing structure. Do whatever you can to keep the resources going to the classroom and to the mission. Eliminate duplication where you can. I know you're trying. Keep the pressure on to eliminate administrative costs and keep the resources going to the students. We have a great university. We don't want to see it splintered based upon who's in power in the governor's office or who's in power within the legislature, because things shift all the time and we don't want resources, shifting between campuses. based on those shifting relationships in the legislature. We want you folks to be able to maintain the power to run the university and to allocate resources as you see fit, taking the whole state, in mind as a whole. So anyway, my basic message: stay with one system. Continue to consolidate where you can. Some things make sense. It does make sense to consolidate administrative functions, that's for sure. And so do the best you can. I know you've been dealt a bad hand. I appreciate your service. I know it's not an easy job. It's a very difficult job. So
Thank you very much. Regent Purdue.
Well, Senator Frank, of course, we went to high school together, so, it's not exactly Senator Frank, but I just want to thank you for your advocacy on behalf of the university in this last year. I know you put a lot of energy into it, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I have Daniel Vaziri.
Hello. So I have a little trouble talking in front of small groups for some reason. So I'm just going to read off this like I did it last time. So as you guys might remember, my name is Daniel Vaziri. Last time I was up here with Bernard Ayoto and Aiden Ernest. So after we spoke to you guys, I spoke to Chair Davies and President Johnson in person off to the side, and they said they are doing things to better the student involvement. But I said it doesn't matter to both of them. They need to show us what they are doing. Doing things behind our back isn't right. Do these things with us. I am pleased to let everyone know that I've been updated that our voice on the board, Regent Garrett, has been acknowledged and recognized respectfully. At the last meeting, Regent Beretta came up to us when we were standing on the side and told us that we will have a chance to speak, as is the students that were present. But Regent Hughes tried to keep us from speaking. I understand it wasn't part of the meeting, but it's not bad to hear the students' voices. We need more regents that will actually listen to us and not just hear us. Trust is not hard to accomplish. I've heard a lot of people say that it is hard to accomplish and stuff. It's not. All you have to do is listen to us, include us. And lastly, actions have consequences. As students don't know what actions are happening, and we have no idea of what consequences are coming our way. Please include us more and more. And if you need help on how to include us, come and ask us. Last thing I would like to ask is all the students present just to stand up so people know who they can go to student-wise.
Thank you, and I do want to acknowledge, I appreciate the students traveling up here and being here for yesterday's meeting and listening to that, and then your testimony this morning. So thank you for making the effort. Next, I have Bernard Ayoto.
Hello, thank you all. So my name is Bernard Ayoto. I am a fourth year undergraduate student studying political science and minoring in justice, set to graduate in spring 2020, hopefully, if I can get all my assignments done. I sit here before you today on National First Generation College Day as a first generation student set to graduate, hopefully by the end of the semester or next semester. Furthermore, I sit before this board as a student veteran a few days before Veterans Day to acknowledge that as you the pleasure I've had at UAF as a Purple Heart campus, looking out for the needs of student veterans. Thank you. So there's a couple points that I want to address. Firstly, I want to address the role of student governments and my understanding of it. I want to make sure that everyone understands that student governments are designed to represent the voice of the students and not the administration. If we either individually or collectively express confusion, concern, or frustration with the decisions or messaging that comes from the system-wide office or at our universities, it shouldn't fall directly on us to just propagate that, those messages and those statements. It requires administrators from system-wide and our universities to help us better understand and communicate those concerns that we're expressing on the student side. If communication has become blurred or obfuscated, it cannot simply fall on us to fix those lines of communication. It requires consistent work from the administration, the board, and our universities to make sure that those lines are fixed. If confidence is broken, it is not up to us and only us to mend that damage. It requires this to the board when it came about. To that point about student veterans, when you're looking into online classes, consider the fact that student veterans, when they choose their colleges, in order to get their full VA benefits, they need to have at least one in-person class. So a push towards online-only classes and a continual push to more online-only classes will further disincentivize student veterans from pursuing education in Alaska, because in order to get their benefits, they need to make sure that they're taking in-person classes as required by the VA. So please take that into consideration with everything that you're considering as well.
Thank you. Next, I have Joe Kuechly.
Good morning. And I can say I'm a former student, and I was a senator at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and I have a daughter who, much to my surprise, is a sea wolf, so I can appreciate UAA students as well. I just want the students to know I'm a lawyer. I've been here for 2 hours, so I don't know who to send my bill to for the about $600 that I've spent waiting, so I'll be brief. I echo Steve Frank's comments completely. I think that a consolidated university makes sense, and as a lawyer, I'm looking at the Constitution of the state of Alaska, which can't be just fixed, thank God, by the legislature or changed. There's a whole process for amending the Constitution of the state. And it says the University of Alaska is hereby established as the state university and constituted a body corporate. A body corporate to me says that there is one institution. I am very concerned about if we take apart the university and have separate campuses, the politics of that will be devastating, I think, particularly to research campuses. I'm very concerned about the bulk of the research is at UAF. I'm very concerned about what's going to happen to a research campus and those dollars. The students are very important, there's no question, but there are more constituencies than just the student body. And as I've graduated from here and looked at those constituencies, you realize that there's much more than just the students, and what enhances the student experience is the research. And that is why this university has become so famous and why it gets so many research dollars. And I'm very concerned about just the sole focus on, if we look at student equivalencies and full-time student equivalents, I think that is too narrow of a vacuum to look at when you consider the university and what should be done. And I really don't want to throw this to the legislature. I think it's very important that the legislature wisely has a statewide system and a regents, and that you all make the decisions for the university to hopefully make it a little bit of a less political situation. So I encourage all of you to be, I know you're being thoughtful, you've been dealt a very difficult hand. In most of this, my message, I keep hearing in my head, let's shoot the messenger. That's what it feels like. You know, I feel for you, President Johnson. Who would want your job right now? All of you have been dealt a poor hand. What happened came about so suddenly. All of us were taken off guard, not just students. And I also want to tell the students, I remember having so many of these discussions 40 years ago when I was in student government. Tuition increases are never popular. They're never easy. And the other thing I wanted to say is I came from Kentucky to come to school here. The UA was my first home. I love the university for that reason. And I would love to see some of the effort being made to really go recruit out of state. Alaska offers such a unique experience for students. It's still very economical as an out-of-state student. I was shocked. That's why I came here. It was so economical as an out-of-state student. And I would like us to see more marketing, because I think that that's where, if we could get more students in this amazing place, I think so many of our financial issues would probably resolve themselves. So thanks so much, and good luck as you continue to pursue. I don't envy you, so thanks so much.
Thank you. Diana Ramstad.
Hi, my name is Diana Ramstad, and I'm a first-generation college student. I'm going to briefly tell you that my grandmother, Mary Krogstad, was the federal court reporter here at University of Alaska Fairbanks that transcribed the Alaska State Constitution. And one of the things she always told me growing up, and she also could take me right to Signers Hall and show me exactly where she sat, was that when it came to the education and when it came to the University of Alaska, there was less argument and less disagreement. She's told me that. She passed away, but she told me that most of my life. And I chose to come to University of Alaska Fairbanks and continue my education as a non-traditional student because I love the University of Alaska. I love the University of Alaska Fairbanks. I am also a senator at ASUAF because I love this university. I love everything that we're doing here. ASUAF recently, we unanimously said, we do not want the 5%. Every time the tuition is raised like that, you risk students not coming. I want to urge the Board of Regents to get out and talk to students. Come walk around the Wood Center at this campus. Go to UAA, walk around their center. I've actually attended all three. I was on the UAA Seawolf speech and debate team in 1990, 91. I have attended the University of Alaska Southeast for one semester, and then I chose to come here to graduate in hopefully the spring of 2020. But every time the tuition is raised, students suffer. And I have to respectfully disagree with some comments. Students count. We come first. University of Alaska was founded for students only. That's what it's here for. It is here, I'm going to be brief, but it's here for all of us, all of our stories. As a senator, I hear all those stories all the time. Yesterday, a student came to me and said, my bill is $10,000 a semester. What do I do? Luckily, we have the resources to help them, and we're in the process of helping them because there was an error in their bill. But if there wasn't ASUAF and there wasn't students to help them, how could they get help and how can they stay in school? That's why we continue to do this. I'm here instead of doing homework because this university matters. And I want to give a shout out to our Regent Garrett, because as our student regent, she has made voices of students matter. The Board of Regents needs to get out and talk to students. Don't go as a regent, go as a person who's trying to help this university and just walk around this campus. And if you're not sure who to talk to, go to the governments of each university and branch campuses and find out how to talk to students. Believe me, we'll facilitate that. Informal, formal, however the policies are supposed to be, we can help you make that happen. That is our job. My job is to represent the students, though, not the administration, period. End of statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Shelley Eberno.
Thank you for this opportunity, and boy, you guys are having a rough day.
I'm really, really sorry. So I'm actually here, I'm the CEO for Foundation Health Partners, which is pretty much the health system here in Fairbanks. I'm a University of Alaska Fairbanks graduate. My daughter is currently attending UAF and she's an exchange student in London. So thank you very much. I'm very proud of this university and all that it has accomplished. And if you were to come to our organization and look around, a high percentage of our executives all have degrees from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. It's extremely important to us. We get most of our nurses from your program. They also round in our facility, and so we are excellent partners. When you start thinking about what you're doing with the university, and I understand the student's position, but you have a huge effect on us economically throughout the state. Right? And so you have not only a duty to the students, but you have the duty to the community. I am running really late because I have Colonel Jenkins on a phone call next to figure out how do we staff our hospital and our clinic so that we can take care of the expanded population when the F-35s come in. You're a huge part of that for us. You're a huge part of that. Jess, we have a partnership through CTC for CNAs. You produce some of the people that take care of the most vulnerable people in this community. Right? Our social workers and our ED who are taking care of the behavioral health and mentally ill come from your university, right? So what you're producing is extremely important and it has a huge effect globally on the economy, not just on the students that are here. And I understand, students are extremely important. My daughter's one of them. Right? But it goes beyond just the students are here. You have students that are alumni, you have students that will be alumni, and all of that's important. So I would beg you when you're making this decision that you think about it as a global decision because it's very important. Great partnerships though with UAF and Dan White. I appreciate the relationship. I've had a long-standing relationship with Jim Johnson and it's been wonderful. I know you guys are facing tough times, so are we. We're part of those cuts in the healthcare, right? So it's not just you that are getting cuts. We're all going to have to make really hard decisions, but we're in this together. So please stay in it with us together. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Forrest Wagner. Is this a different person than signed? You already spoke? Okay, great. Thank you. I thought so. Next is Susan Downing. Susan here? Not, then we'll move on to Bart Lamont. Representative LeBon, thank you.
I'm Bart LeBon. I serve in the Alaska State House. I represent District 1, which is downtown Fairbanks. University of Alaska, class of 1975. And I'm one of those out-of-state students that came up on a scholarship to play basketball many years ago. And I surprised myself and I stayed here in Fairbanks. And then I did not think that would happen. But Fairbanks in Alaska grows on you. And I tell people that I'm now in year 47 of a 2-year plan. So I'm very proud to be here. Could I ask a quick question of the audience? How many students are in the audience, please? Show of hands. And then a second question, how many of you are receiving a UA Scholar benefit? There's a comment made about UA Scholars program, and I am 100% in support of that program, and I voted to refund that program. There's a annual process that has to occur in the state legislature to do what is called the reverse sweep, to put that money back in the program. And it did get tangled up in some politics this year. And after a little bit of wrangling, we finally sorted through it and we did fund the UA Scholars Program. And I will pay closer attention to that this year and make sure that the drama is reduced to the lowest level possible. If I may, we are facing quite a challenge, not just as a university, but as the state of Alaska. Along with Representative Adam Wohl, I sit on House Finance. So we get to see a lot of things that happen through House Finance, all budgets. Just about everything that happens in the legislature flows through House Finance. So you really get up to speed. We took our House Finance Committee meeting, the public hearing portion, on the road this past session. We took public testimony in Juneau, Anchorage, Wasilla, and Fairbanks. Totaled about 20 hours of public testimony on the budget, operating budget. In Fairbanks, it went from 2 p.m. to midnight. And anybody that wanted to speak, we heard. And I appreciate you're doing the same here today. But what we're facing as a state, we're at a crossroads. And that crossroads is where do we want to be in 5 years? And we wrestle with this down in Juneau. We were called into a second special session to meet in Wasilla. 3 dozen of us went to Juneau and 2 dozen of us went to Wasilla. There's your divide. And we're going to have to work our way through that as a legislature, both House and Senate. I'm fortunate to be in the majority in the House, and I do have a seat on the Senate, or the House Finance Committee. The Senate has their challenges, and ultimately we have to figure out a way to work together. That's our challenge. What includes in your challenge, in my opinion, is your business model here. What does it look like in 5 years? And I know you have some heavy lifting. We have some heavy lifting in Juneau. What I'm hoping is that you remember that athletics has a part in the university history. Even when UAA started to emerge as a 4-year campus, and when I arrived here in '72, it was not a 4-year campus. I believe it was just a community college. Mary's giving me the affirmative. So when I played basketball at the University of Alaska, it was just the University of Alaska. It was not University of Alaska at Fairbanks, it was the University of Alaska. UAA emerged, and athletics were an early part of the campus business model at UAA. I think the value of athletics was recognized at UAA early in that process to build the spirit of the community, the interaction with the community on the campus, recruiting students, trying to attract support. Athletics helps to do that. Every team that travels, be it UAA or UAF, they're ambassadors for the university. I think you want to hold on to that. You heard from one of the members of the UAF women's volleyball team. Very articulate young lady. It's an honor to know her, and it's a pleasure to watch her perform. The Nooks won last night, Gold Nooks. And I want you to do everything you reasonably can to protect that part of your business model. Athletics are so important. I know that's on the agenda today, so maybe I should wrap it up right now. But thank you for this opportunity to speak. And today I'm here representing not just UAF, but UAA, and I want the whole university system to thrive. And I think athletics is a big part of that. So thank you. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to stay here as long as you'd like me to.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here. Yeah. Okay, that's the end of the sign-up sheets that I have, and so we're gonna wrap up the public testimony at this point. We're an hour into the rest of our agenda, and
before we take a break,
okay.
The testimony we received today. While I had questions for everybody that made presentations so that we could hear from everybody, I did not make comment or ask questions, but I do very much appreciate everybody who has come and shared their thoughts, provided us with wonderful ideas. And as I said when Susan was up, I do see this as an inclusive process that includes the students, the staff, the faculty, community members as we move forward with our dialogue and our discussion.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank everybody who came in here and testified to us. This has been one of the most weighty, interesting public testimonies that I've sat through since being on the Board of Regents. Students' enthusiasm and interest, the faculty that testified with some enthusiasm, makes me wish I could become a student again. I'd like to take a history course down in Juneau. I'd like to climb Denali. So I think the university is doing a lot of interesting things, and there was a lot of information conveyed to us here this morning. And I, as a regent, appreciate that. Thank you.
Regent Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to speak to the board really quickly here to the comments that Professor Forrest Wagner made on how fabulous our university is in our outdoor studies arena, and that we should rise to be the #1 climate university in the world, or at least in the Arctic. I think it's here, it's us. Thank you, Forrest, for those comments. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're gonna take a 10-minute break and then come back to the agenda here.